In today's episode, John asks, targeting larger clients can be extremely competitive. Any advice on developing a strategy to grab their attention? Well, it depends. It depends on how your clients or prospective clients do their purchasing, right? So what does their customer journey look like? And a lot of the time, companies that are in the same industry have similar purchasing processes. So the first and probably most important question is, what is that process? How does it work? How do people make choices in your industry? Is it something as simple as, an intern pulling together a short list? Is there an RFP process? What are all the different things that go into purchasing? Once you know that, once you know how somebody does business in your industry, then you can start figuring out what are the specific tactics that map to that. For example, if you are dealing with a situation where you just have sort of a junior staffer pulling together a short list, then a lot of things that are in the public relations realm actually apply really well. So awards, as much as awards are pay to play, a lot of the time they matter because your more junior person's just going to Google, award-winning whatever. And of course, if you've done a good job with your organic search optimization stuff, you will probably be in that list of results. If you're in industry publications, you're building mind share. That's for a more casual purchasing process. That's the way to go. If you have presence of mind, then getting in front of people is a little bit easier, right? Than if no one's ever heard of your company before. Picking up the phone and smiling and dialing is not super effective because nobody likes being called by people they don't know. Very few people like that. If you have something more like an RFP process, then making sure that you're doing, simple stuff like being in SAP Ariba, in the Ariba marketplace, and maintaining your profile so that as companies go to issue RFPs, you make that list. Making sure that you are targeting and focusing on procurement staffers within organizations. Because again, those are the folks who are logging into Ariba and typing the searches that are needed to bring up a list of vendors that they can then go do their due diligence on. That's the more formal process for RFPs. One of the challenges with RFPs is that, as my colleague John Wallach's called, they're like second place contests. Typically, a company has a vendor in mind, but for many different reasons, some of which are regulatory, they have to put it out for bid. And then they're going to pick who they chose anyway. So there's still value in cultivating those relationships, cultivating mind share within your industry. One of the more valuable things you can do, especially for larger clients and also for organizations where there isn't a clear professional community, is to build your own community. For example, we have the Analytics for Marketers Slack group. If you go to trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers, you can see this. It's a Slack group. Having regular, frequent access to your audience to communicate with them, a two-way communication, is incredibly valuable because when somebody starts thinking about, well, how can, who do I know that does this thing? If you're on their mind a lot, then when it comes time to issue those requests for information or requests for proposal, whatever, you at least get a chance at bat. And ideally, the sort of the dream for every salesperson is your company's reputation is so good that they skip the RFP process entirely. They say there's no other company that can do this other than this vendor, so we're just going to go ahead with this vendor. Again, there may be regulatory requirements, particularly if you're working with governments. For example, in the place where I live, a certain percentage of government contracts must go to women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses by law. It's written in. So though that's another area entirely where if you are dealing with larger organizations that have regulatory requirements, how can you conform your business to those requirements so that, again, you make the list? Think of it like search optimization for procurement systems, right? When someone goes into Google, there's a massive, complex, very sophisticated machine learning engine making recommendations. When you go into some of these more legacy purchasing systems, they're all basic keyword search systems, right? They don't have, a lot of vendors don't invest a ton of money in machine learning algorithms and recommendation engines. So they're still pretty primitive, which means that you want to optimize your profile in those systems to have the best chance of, being shown for the categories you want to be shown for, to the types of companies you want to be showing with. Again, this requires market research, and not just Googling for stuff, but actually picking up the phone and talking to your existing customers. Say you have, 20 customers, but 3 of them are really in the target that you're seeking. Like, they're the bigger companies, they're good customers, things like that. You get on the phone with your point of contact and maybe their boss and say, hey, I'm doing some research. I'm trying to figure out where we can find more great clients like you. When you were making the decision to hire us, how did you find us? What was your internal purchasing process like? Hey, can I, spend 45 minutes and buy you a coffee or a lunch or something, and have you walk through how you and maybe any competitors that or non-competitive companies, how they do their procurement. That level of market research can only come from in-depth questioning, so you want to make sure that you are well-positioned, and to do that, you need to get inside the heads of your buyers, right? And that all comes from just talking to people and trying to figure out how companies work inside. So your strategy has to map to the customers. There is no one-size-fits-all strategy, particularly for larger companies. There is no one-size-fits-all strategy for an industry, and you're going to have different kinds of companies. One other thing to think about is if there are certain companies in your industry that have a reputation of being difficult to work with, you may want to see how those companies do their procurement and then avoid them. Now, I recognize, obviously, you may not be in a position to turn down business, but a bad customer is a bad customer. So anything you can do to not only target those larger clients you do want, but not target those clients you don't want is going to pay dividends down the road. So really good question. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.